Within a week of being in East Africa, I knew I came home. But it was in 99, and I never looked back. There is a mental window, and I wanted for other people around the world to also see that there was much more to Africa than they imagined. But also for Africa to see the world, because people here have a much too positive perception of what is there in Europe, in America. And we pretty much helped him create what today is called Tom's Homestay. He's pretty much a hotelier. He cooks, he guides them around the island, he entertains them around the campfire, his wife and others. So for his retirement, we made him a hotelier. I could see the happiness of Ugandans and Rwandans and the Congolese coming together, getting to know each other, getting to know a new country. That is unfortunately rare. We have national parks shared by 3 countries, but the rangers hardly interact with each other. There's just not enough of that human connection. And I believe that human connection is going to build that stability over time. So everything that we do through Trello, teaching people how to use Trello, was because I kind of realized that it was simple enough for people to grasp. Guides upload their reports to Trello, put pictures that they take during the trip. It's like our booking system, it's our reporting system, it's our learning system, all that.
Miha, tell me, what led you to Africa and to start Gorilla Highlands? I'm really curious to learn about your story right from the beginning.
Okay, let's start with Miha's story right from the beginning. So, I wasn't one of those people who grow up dreaming about Africa. You know, there are many who are brought up reading certain books and watching Tarzan and dreaming about it. I really wasn't one of that target audience. My interest was the developing world. So, I chose Africa as an example of a continent that I think globally people consider the one that is the poorest, has most problems, or whatever you want to call it, the most underdeveloped part of the world. And the other side of my interest was new technologies. That is where your mission and my story connect very closely. So I was into seeing how new technologies could actually be applied in the developing world to the benefit of the people. I was a student of journalism, but we had international relations as our specialty. And, you know, then you could pretty much choose any kind of a topic for your thesis. And those were the 1990s when so much was talked about in a very utopian way of how new technologies were going to change everything. I still remember an issue of the Wired magazine that was completely devoted to the brave new world because of the internet and other tech. But I said to myself, okay, fine, great. What about those who don't help? And I turned the usual picture of that time upside down. That time, the internet was pretty much the domain of Western European / American male in a big city who pretty much, you know, entered this through the hobbyist nature of computers, who pretty much developed interest because of the tinkering with hardware and so on. That was before the technologies became really communication technologies, and when other people, especially ladies, got interested in using them. Well, I turned it upside down by saying, how does this help a Black African woman farmer? So the exact opposite. And that was the research topic. And Africa was chosen because of the reason that I started. And then I found Uganda as a country on the cutting edge of these developments in the 1990s, because the president was very much into new technologies, as much as Rwanda is these days. And I was already, how to say, excited very in advance, because when I went and checked how this Uganda looked like, it wasn't that Africa that I had in my mind. I think that most people held a Safari Africa in their visualization of the continent, but this is, of course, a very different part of the continent, very green, full of lakes, very cold at times. We are pretty much in the mountains, very high on the African plateau. So I was already prepared mentally that this was going to be having a big impact on me. Well, I kind of, I don't know, anticipated something dramatic, I guess, because even when my mentor said that I didn't need to go to Africa for my case study, I reacted in such a passionate way that I needed to go. And that wasn't an academician speaking. There was something pulling me here, I guess. And I would say that within a week of being in East Africa, I knew I came home. That was in 99. And I never looked back. I had previously studied technology. China was of my interest. But once I saw East Africa, I felt I belonged here. And of course, when I wanted to find my way into the region, it kind of made sense to connect that with my master's degree studies. So I found a private university on the equator, collected all the information while still doing the research for my bachelor's degree. And then later on, I applied to do my master's. And during my master's studies, I met all kinds of interesting professors, individuals, people that inspired me directly, what we have today, but not directly. I first had this concept of ISA on my mind. ISA meant a window, and I wanted for other people around the world to also see that there was much more to Africa than they imagined. So the window was supposed for the world to see Africa, but also for Africa to see the world, because people here have a very simplified perception of what is there in Europe, in America, much too positive. The way the picture of Africa is much too negative, of Europe and the West in general is much too positive in the developing world. So that was my first thing, Dirisa, and we even applied for the award when it was still pretty much the organization behind it with a project called Gorilla Highlands. So that was kind of to, do something good for the region in the southwest of Uganda, and later organically expanded to Rwanda and Eastern Congo. And we wanted to bring peace and prosperity, development, all these things to this amazing region. It was a project of this Dirisa that I talked about. But during the pandemic, it was kind of hard to be doing things in different countries because of all the border closures and other limitations. So that's when we pretty much retired the whole Igris organizational concept, and now we are just Gorilla Highlands. So the interactive book that won us the award was just the beginning, that then became a much bigger thing with paper booklets, with all kinds of media production, of course, also online, but then also a cooking competition for the chefs of the 3 countries and other events and activities. So when we were pretty much cashless for a number of years because COVID was making the world a mess, I also got tired of asking my parents to help me. I was a little bit too old for that. So I made a commitment that after the pandemic, I was going to develop a proper source of income. And that's why now, the last few years, we are pretty much, at least towards the outside world, we are promoted as a tour agency / tour operator, responsible tourism in this particular region, but there is a much bigger organization behind. So there is an NGO side, there is a business side. Unfortunately, here you can't be a social enterprise. It doesn't exist as a status. So we have this tour company that is supposed to generate income based on tourism as the export industry of our region. And then there is the NGO side, currently running a youth program in Rwanda, but we expanded it to the other countries as soon as possible to kind of give young people leadership skills, knowledge, interesting environment, and in a way, a kind of a startup accelerator for rural African areas that we want to do in 3 countries, connect the youth, mix them, we organize like a Christmas camp where people from 3 countries spend a weekend together, just to build linkages and hopefully a foundation for a more peaceful future for the 3 countries, because there are always unnecessary conflicts currently between Congo and Rwanda, and we want to overcome that. We also run a podcast about the region. We are about to restart a cooking competition. The booklet that I previously mentioned. We're also hoping to print it twice a year, all that to promote the region internationally, and then, trying to do good things within the region. Now, the connection to the interactive book that we applied with is still quite strong, because it's not just that we are information based. We also believe that everybody who comes here benefits from the same stories, whether they are in a digital form or whether they are with a local guide. It's those stories that sell the region beyond the gorillas. We have gorillas in our name, but we've always been more devoted to showcasing other things. So people don't just come to see the big primates, but hopefully devote some more time to our region, do cultural tourism as well, do things that make money for the local partners, but also make them proud, because in some ways, somebody visiting is also a validation of their experience, of their existence. I fly from far away to being in an African village. That means that there is something interesting in the African village. Well, of course, people here, unfortunately, commonly believe that there is nothing that they can do with what they have. Migrate to at least Dubai, not Vienna, for a better life. So I just gave you like a very summarized version of the stories that I many times need to share with my visitors.
Wow, it is a really great summary indeed. I don't even know where to begin, but let's maybe start from the beginning still. You are a very eager, motivated student who all of a sudden discovers Africa and feels falling in love with it. By the way, which country did you study in?
I did my journalism in Slovenia. Slovenia is my country of origin, but from 2000 on, I've been living in East Africa. So now I also have a Ugandan passport. But yeah, I exist as a Ugandan in Rwanda.
So basically, you're a Slovenian who is writing his thesis and you fall in love with Africa. You moved to Uganda in 2000s, and then you're a European living in Uganda and decide to move there. Can you tell me what happened next in more detail? How did all that journey really play out for you from the beginning?
Do you want to know why? I mean, okay, first of all, let's be very clear. People often get confused. There was no woman, it was Africa.
Let's get it out of the way, yeah.
Yeah. I was just fascinated by the open space. I usually compare the West as, an environment in which you are a cog in a big machine. And whether you are there or not, the machine is still going to work. While here, we have an opportunity to, build new machines, start from scratch, do something radical, do something different. And that is intoxicating to me. So then add to that beautiful environment, very welcoming people. And it's not difficult to feel at home. If you have a little bit of this entrepreneurial nature in yourself, this is heaven. People who leave this continent to be in Europe and have a job there, that is one side of the coin. The other coin is it's for somebody who's more of an entrepreneur who would like to build something. This is much better than Europe. So if you want the job, go to Europe. If you want to start something, go to Africa. It's pretty much how I see.
And that is probably such a different way of how most Europeans see Africa, right? Who have never been there. All those preconceptions about the infrastructure, the education of the people, the corruption in the government. I believe, people who have never been probably have or are more scared than more eager to start a business in Africa. So tell me, you come to Uganda in 2000s, and then all the way to winning the WSA award in 2013. What happens in between? I believe you've definitely been doing quite a lot of things in between these two dates. So can you tell me more about that part of your life?
When I came, we needed to climb a mountain at our Lake Bunyani to get connectivity, to be on the phone. Of course, it has changed unbelievably. Like Uganda and Rwanda, so covered with connectivity, with networks that people from other countries are just amazed, because, we are definitely better off than South Africa or parts of America or whatever. We are totally digital here. The roads the infrastructure, everything, of course, in 20 years have gone, to completely another level. So from the point of the environment, the change has been dramatic. Also means that young people here are now much more connected, to the global hive mind. Young people are much more dynamic than they used to be because they basically grow up with the internet as part of their life. So that's also a significant change that I witnessed. But as far as I was concerned, it was very straightforward. I did my master's degree at that university on the equator and then moved immediately to Lake Bunyani. My idea was to kind of combine my passion for technology with giving access to rural people. So our place at Lake Bunyani, it was first kind of an information center, resource center. We showed movies on a laptop powered by a car battery. Then later on solar came, then later on the grid came. But we started in the real village. And if you are an information center, it kind of also makes sense to develop materials. So having this idea to do an interactive ebook is pretty logical. It was just that the software came around, had access to great photographers and designers and everything. We said, okay, let's do something special about this special region. So pretty much that. Of course, we also did good things at the local school. We were engaged in all kinds of development projects like developing craft and other stuff. But this information/technology component is pretty much, the red thread through everything that we've done. I've always been, a tech enthusiast, a gadget freak. I've always followed everything, always had the newest things. I was like, that to me is paradise, to be in a wild area with the best laptop available.
And so the information center was actually mostly geared towards the locals to kind of promote the technology.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, just promote knowledge. I see technology as a means, to know better, to understand the world a little bit better. I might be having specific, passions that have to do with gadgets, but I mean, in today's world, these gadgets are all about information and communication, aren't they? Anyways, that's what we do with them. So yeah, initially it was let's change the perception of the world, the local community. We got in international volunteers and so on. But right from the beginning, it was also about changing the perception abroad. So of course, then it made sense to make an interactive book when there was a chance to do that.
And who is we? I'm still grasping my head around a European setting up an information center in Africa. So who was there with you from the beginning and helped you to do it all?
The way is a very contemporary group, like people who don't stay at the same place, but are all connected through their love for this region. They mostly came to this region through me, or I met them there, and life might have taken them to other parts of the world, but there are some really high caliber individuals who help us with everything that we do. For example, just for this interactive book, we had a big issue getting high quality photography. And just like that, Swedish upcoming photographer emailed us, hey, I'm coming to your part of the world. Would you feed me and give me accommodation and I take pictures for you? Today he works for the New York Times.
Nice.
Yeah, so that kind of, building of a circle of friends over 20 years results in, pretty much having high-class talent and professionals in any field. So, for example, when we had this, we call it Youth Space, this program for young people of Rwanda, I pretty much just tapped into my network, and these people or came or had Zoom sessions with our participants. I mean, we are not, if our company is called Gorilla Highlands, the tour company, the NGO is called Gorilla Highlands Experts, and these experts are like 20 to 30 people who are really extremely, elite in terms of what they mean in different spheres of professional endeavor, all with a connection to this region. So that's we. Of course, when I asked them, what somebody among you want to run a tour company? And somebody said yes. So that's why I need to do that. But I'm doing it with the idea of building something that can run itself. And I'm now grateful that my son is also 17 years old as well. So my son is helping a lot. Got some local employees. Our experts are a mix of locals and international people. So yeah, I would say that we is like 30 people. Last weekend, I had an all hands meeting in Kigali and people came from 3 countries and we were like 25, but those were pretty much tour professionals, freelance guides and so on. So yeah, we is a broad concept that probably means 20 to 30 people that are like that have been continuously involved for the last 10 plus years. Yeah.
What about the local communities? Can you share any success stories or anything about the projects that you've done? Anything that really comes to your mind in terms of the impact with the local communities that you have already achieved?
Youth spaces, this youth is probably the most powerful one. So it was basically 20 to 25 youngsters, high schoolers and students having weekend sessions for like 4 months every weekend with experts from capital cities and other parts of the world coming there and basically giving their knowledge to them, helping them develop business projects. And I mean, those high schoolers, they can't really do business because they are at boarding school. So in their case, it's projects, but for others, it was business. It just needed to be like something with an environmental bent. Like it needed to have a very clear connection to the environment, at least not, I mean, to be good for what we are trying to harness here. I mean, the amazing natural environment. So that is, I would say, a good example from what we do outside of tourism. But within tourism, you know, we've developed partnerships with pygmies who receive visitors. And as I said before, they make money, but they also get some cultural pride that was lacking before. We've developed village homestays where you go to a remote part of Uganda or Rwanda and pitch it on somebody's compound, and then they cook for you and everything. We've developed local guides. Last year, I ran a WhatsApp guide training project, and we had 100 participants from the 3 countries. So all in all, there's a lot in terms of what we do for people, in terms of above all, making a living. That's also the motivation. Like people are more responsive to help them make a living. So that's why tourism, even if the client is an outsider, the beneficiary is local because they provide services that then these visitors pay for.
Nice. This sounds like super important work that has huge impact in the local communities. And do you have any local stories how actually the tourism helps to increase the livelihood and bring prosperity to the people? Does any story spring to your mind?
Yeah, okay. The first one that comes to mind is Mr. Tom. Tom was our security guard. We had problems at our location at Lake Bunyani with occasional thieves messing up with us. So we looked for somebody very experienced. He was an elderly gentleman who used to work in Uganda's prisons and used to work at some campsites around Lake. So we employed him, and he worked for us for 10 years, roughly, more than 10 years. By the way, as a side story, when he had the 10-year anniversary, and I asked him, "What would you want to do? What would you want to get?" He said, "I want to see gorillas." So we took him to see gorillas. That very few people, very few local people actually experience that.
Okay.
But anyways, Tom was there, and we needed, as I said, campsites. We needed interesting locations at this lake. So our volunteers talked to Tom about what exactly he had at home, and we decided to go check. And it turned out he had this amazing island, very beautiful space. And we pretty much helped him create what today is called Tom's Homestay. And he's too old to be in security services. He's pretty much a hotelier. He slowly built a house as well for visitors, but so far it's still, we bring our tents and, he cooks for them himself. He doesn't trust his family. He's hands-on. He does everything. He cooks, he guides them around the island, he entertains them around the campfire. His wife and others help, but he's the big man. So for his retirement, we made him a hotelier. He seems to be enjoying that, and everybody else who meets him also finds him extremely special. So that would be, I think, the most special story. But then, it's individuals. Basically, the typical story is a young person who becomes a guide, starts by paddling canoes on Lake Bunyani. We see some promise. We upgrade them over time, and they start leading people around. They become tour guides. And the number one thing, probably, for what we are known for is our achievements with Batwa pygmies, who are the poorest of the poor. And we pretty much reformed the way tourism is done with them. We see them as our partners and friends. And when people come to be with them, they are really moved. It's a very powerful experience. So that community gets substantial money from these visitors, maybe once, twice a week. It's not too much. It's just a little bit to help them make a living and definitely enriching people's experience of Uganda and Rwanda.
And what about the other side? How are you attracting tourists?
We don't. They find us.
Nice.
We don't do marketing. We will, and we should one day. We are getting there. Occasionally, they write about us. 2 years ago, we won a global award for responsible tourism. And then there were articles written about us in Slovenia. So that meant a number of new clients from Slovenia. During the pandemic, there was an article written about us in the Washington Post. And we are still getting visitors because of that. But outside of that, it's pretty much the word of mouth. What we do is still to a degree specialized in hiking and canoeing. We do everything else, but we are known for treks. And that is a specific, target audience that tells each other, you need to go do that, 1 week hike through African villages. The word spreads.
So what is so special about the hike and the guide that people would share it?
The whole concept of not being at lodges, or not always at lodges, but, stay with local families. The way we do our routes far away from where tourism happens. It's really like a rural development project that also benefits you as a visitor as you go, and where nobody goes and people want that. They want to go and nobody has been, or where very few people have been. And all these cultural aspects and a very clear feeling that people get that this is beneficial to everybody involved. This is not that tourism that discourages people. Sometimes we get inquiries and people say, no, we don't want to do any cultural tourism, because they imagine what you get in more massive tourism destinations when you throw some money and some people dance, and that's culture. With us, it's like live the life, experience the day-to-day of our people. And that is reportedly a very powerful concept after the pandemic. Authentic, local, all these things are supposedly going to be very popular in Tunisia.
I hear you laughing at the supposedly.
Because we've not yet seen any boom that they promised during the pandemic. In the pandemic, they said, responsible tourism and all these things, they're going to be the number one thing after the pandemic. It's not like that yet, but it's definitely the way forward. There is experience that people crave, not commercialized mass experiences.
Yeah, unfortunately, you need to advertise it in a very commercial way for people to know about it.
If we hardly keep up with inquiries that happen organically, then we should not be stressing too much, right?
Yeah.
But what we are going to try to do this year is to have more specific marketing persona, to really reach out, for example, to teachers who want to organize an educational trip in Africa and a partner like us. To kind of be more focused on the most interesting clientele. That's what we have not done enough. Before the pandemic, we had an unbelievable connection with an organization that was building playgrounds around East Africa, and they brought us like between 100 and 200 British hikers every year, and we would organize for them a 4-day hike that ended up with gorilla trekking, and they loved it. But in the pandemic, they changed their concept, so that stopped. So we kind of saw that as a very interesting growth opportunity also with other volunteers, students, high schoolers. We should be able to convince a school that if they go to Africa with us, they'll be safe. I think that is our strength. We can show a couple of awards. We can tell them that we are professionals and that we have a couple of certifications, and then hopefully they feel more at peace sending their kids to.
Okay, I have so many questions about every angle of your story that we could have a separate conversation probably about each of them. But how are you planning to prevent the locals, once they see the money and see the more tourists coming in, from becoming very commercial and just trying to really please tourists?
We are helped by insecurity. There is always something happening somewhere in our region, and they, kind of naturally, can I call that naturally? That keeps the number of tourists down. I don't know. We are far from any form of over tourism. I do occasionally ask, for example, our Badwa Pygmy partners, okay, are you maybe getting too many visitors? And they say no, being more. So there are always, of course, individuals who are just after money, but those people at the end of the day, they organically leave, We're never going to be this super profitable thing. So if you want to make big monies, you go somewhere else. I mean, you look for other kinds of activities. We are pretty much small scale, and that limits profitability and all those things. And nobody that is like our partner relies on us. They have their own lives, and when they get some visitors, and that is, both a monetary benefit and some fun, some excitement. At the same time, visitors also feel that this is not like a commercial. This is a family that is welcoming them to their home, and that is definitely better than feeling that you are in a commercialized setup.
So what is the day-to-day life of your hosts usually?
Usually farmers. They live typical rural life. And then when they get some visitors, they cook a bigger meal, and that's pretty much it. That's how, and in the evening they talk to them or walk with them around. It doesn't really change their rhythms. You just need to cook more.
Sounds like a win-win to both sides. But let's talk about numbers. How much, for example, does it cost for the whole trekking or just one night stay? How many tourists do you get? How many local hosts do you have? Can you tell me a bit more about all of these metrics and numbers?
Our local hosts are not so many, between 5 and 10, depending on how you define them. Is somebody who has a lodge also a local host, or is that a commercial enterprise? I don't know. Our guides are around 20, and because we just run that training session, that's going to increase. We have about, look, I can't even tell you. I'm going to send you in an email. I mean, I had some stats before the pandemic, but that is like a different world. Then last year we were kind of picking up. This year is supposedly, a normal year. I don't know. We have a Slovenian company that sends us like 2 groups of 15 people per year to do 2-week tour around Uganda and Rwanda. We have a Dutch company that brings us Germans almost every week for different activities. We do both long tours or just, half-a-day activities. For example, at Lake Bunyoni, or a tour of Kigali. So this Dutch company sends us clients on a regular basis pretty much every week. And then we have individuals to us wanting a tour, and that's going to be part of our report where we finally meet. It's like a small team, always looking at the most urgent thing that is around the corner. So you can always keep we can always keep reporting for later.
Definitely.
You don't want to disappoint somebody this week while the money can wait till next week. That's how we end up not knowing much. But we are about to get back to an online booking system. We are just having conversation this evening in terms of what kind of information to provide them, because we also want to be promoted in that new Google Things to Do tab. So that is likely to increase our individual customers. But in terms of companies, like tour agencies reaching out to us, it's very occasional. So we are very boutique, tailor-made boutique. How much things cost? I don't know. If you're like two people and you want to enjoy a full day of activities with everything included, also meals, usually going to be around $100 per day, something like that.
Okay, understood. Just curious about the impact in those numbers. But let's move on to another topic. You have mentioned that you're a fan of a technology so many times. What role does technology play in everything what you do at Gorilla Highlands?
It's colorful. So my biggest personal project, for very practical reasons, is that I'm an ambassador of Trello in this part of the world. Do you know Trello?
Yes.
Yeah. So everything that we do through Trello. So when we had this session in Kigali over the weekend, like a number of hours were devoted to teaching people how to use Trello. It was because I kind of realized that it was simple enough for people to grasp. And the more we use it, the more it's becoming clear what works and what doesn't work. And that's how we do everything. Everything is digital. Like guides upload their reports to Trello, guides put pictures that they take during the trip on guides, see what is booked and where they are needed on Trello. Everybody has a smartphone, so that's why it's good to have a simple app on the phone, not too difficult to operate, not too easy to mess up. And then over time, people get used to it. Like some of our Trello boards are extremely complicated, but some are very easy for people to actually get into it. And it helps a lot. It's like our booking system, it's our reporting system, it's our learning system, all that when we talk about tourism specifically, but also when we organized, for example, youth spaces, we of course also had a Trello board and we shared ideas. And of course, we also taught our participants how to use Trello. So Trello is a very big part of our life. Just because I, through experience, realized that it was possible. That was something that was accessible enough that everybody can master, and yeah, it helps us.
Yeah, and then you don't need your own developer team. So actually everything is built and it's all there.
I mean, you can't imagine what we've achieved by just, maximizing the tag. That's pretty much our story, We take something and squeeze everything out of it. So that's in this particular example. So even these people from the booking system, they said, why are you asking us about Trello? Because we want your system to export data to our Trello. We're not going to use your backend to give us an automatic way of getting bookings into our Trello.
So hopefully Trello also recognizes you for that and appreciates all your efforts, maybe learns even something from the way you've done everything. But tell me about bringing technology to people. Is that still an issue? How is the current situation? You mentioned that it got much easier because the new generation, the young people are really tech pro. But you've come a long way from showing a video on a laptop at the beginning powered by a battery to now using Trello, very much automated on mobile devices everywhere. What is the technological landscape in the region?
What's very interesting? It was mobile phones that made people interested in having electricity. Reason why solar panels and all spread much more than they used to, because now everybody needs to charge their phones. That's why wherever you are, you have that. Then, of course, we benefit immensely through mobile money. Pretty much do everything in 3 countries by sending money on the phones. That is a huge help for our transboundary work. I mean, it all pretty much comes down to the phone and how to use it. Whenever I can, I teach people how to do something. They might be having a smartphone with WhatsApp, but that's all they know about it. So When we have like youth spaces sessions, I try to teach them how to maximize their phones and how not to get lost in notifications and all those things.
Yeah, it's just incredible to see how Africa transformed due to mobile phones and leapfrogged so many other different technologies. But let me once again change the topic. I really want to hear about COVID and the impact of how it changed and what have you been doing before, because I assume that we're now talking mostly about the life after COVID. What was it for you before?
Yeah, like the main thing, the main benefit of the pandemic for us was that it allowed us to stop and have a look at everything that we are doing and pretty much regroup. So before the pandemic, we were also promoted as pretty much an NGO, also doing some tourism. Well, now in the post-COVID time, we promote ourselves as a tour company, also doing good things. So that kind of reorientation in terms of our marketing could happen just because of that long break. We could, as I said, regroup. Even though we are doing the same thing, we just kind of change the way we talk about us, and it's quite more successful because it's easier for people to process a tour company that also does good things to process an NGO that also runs tours. So, yeah, easier to swallow because all that we are doing is, unusual. It's hard to pinpoint. It's hard to look for similar concepts elsewhere. So we kind of simplified our story so that people react to it better. But outside of that, the life is the same. We do similar things.
Can you tell me why? Like a bit about your business model before and now, but also why NGO and why are you keeping it boutique?
Well, number one, we are not interested in mass tourism. When I decided to use tourism as the export industry of our region, I needed to also add responsible to it. Otherwise, it would be too dangerous. It would be too tricky. So it's been small, not because we wanted to be super small, but because at the end of the day, it's important to grow organically over time. So now we have a couple of employees who work in the tourism sector, half a day, this and that. I'm not against having a big company in the future. I just don't want a big company that means mass tourism. If it means more people who are compatible with our thinking and who want to, leave a positive impact, and if we can handle, why not? If the region can handle, why not? So before the pandemic, I set up pretty much myself hikes and canoe trips as a side income. It ran itself. It was all pretty much on the shoulders of local guides. We had the booking system that supported it. It was easy. It just ran by itself. Now that we are more general, now that we also offer tours of Uganda, Rwanda, and Congo, it's a little bit different because I currently play the role of the main tour consultant. I really have extensive knowledge that possibly nobody else has that combines the three countries and every detail about each of them. So, at the moment, it's all so boutique, also because of the way we do it. Every client gets a Zoom call, we discuss what they like, then we make an itinerary based on their preference, etc. Of course, there are some templates that we start with. Currently, it's me. I'm that bottleneck. That is going to change over time. We're going to develop a couple of standard offers. Of course, if you do a 3-day hike with us, it's clear what it is. A 3-day hike, it's a package. But most of our clients, they say, I want to spend 2 weeks in Rwanda and Uganda, and this is what I want to do. And then you prepare a program for them. And then you maybe integrate that package, that track into their 2 weeks. So it's custom made. It won't always be like that, I guess. But at the moment, it pretty much rests on my shoulders. I have a plan of about, in a year, I want to be free to leave this crazy business. Yeah, but we are not there. Even just starting an office was a big human resource frustration. Yeah, so we are small only at this stage of our existence because we are pretty much new. As a tour operator, we are new. Exist since like a year and a half ago, something like that. Now, everything else, like this idea of use spaces, things running in 3 countries, of course, it's also going to need to be much bigger when we one day have the capacity to actually have the same program happening in 3 countries. But it took us 1 full year to just get permission to do that in Rwanda. Can you imagine? 1 year to register an NGO in Rwanda. But we also chose Rwanda because it's the most difficult country. Wanted to start with the hardest. So all in all, there's going to be growth, but step by step.
Absolutely. That's probably the best way to do it in any way. And what is your legacy that you want to leave behind Gorilla Highlands? What is the key for you that will be in people's memory about your work and your legacy?
We want, in our wildest dream, we play an important part in creating stability and peace and prosperity in the 3 countries. Is that realistic? I don't know, but why not try? So if we are remembered as some crazy guys who decided to do such things in the middle of the African continent, good for us. That is it. Like everything that we do is about that particular goal. Of course, that is going to take not years, but decades. Like you need to start somewhere. You need to, like, just this event that I mentioned over the week just made me so satisfied because I could see the happiness of the Ugandans and Rwandans and the Congolese coming together, getting to know each other, getting to know a new country. That is unfortunately rare. We have national parks shared by 3 countries, but rangers hardly interact with each other. There's just not enough of that human connection. And I believe that human connection is going to build that stability over time. Of course, there are also other issues that are not politically correct to even discuss because, democracy and other things are not very popular here. But we are trying to build the youth that can say, no, we don't want it like this, we want it like that. And no, we are not going to mess around with those people from another country because we know them, they are our friends. Something like that. That is not a 5-year plan. What I personally want to achieve is a situation where I can decide to pull out at one point. That's where all my energy goes. I want to be, even though I was the founder, even though people got together because of me, the more I can, build systems, the more I can create a reorganization, the happier I am.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, that is what's going to make it sustainable and allow me to do something that's close to my heart. I mentioned that I was a journalist by my basic profession. I would like to do more media work in the future and, share the stories more than trying to make a buck showing this region to visitors.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I understand, your business model for bringing the youth together and doing the accelerator is also financing it through tourism. Is that correct?
We are seeing tourism as our engine of growth. But even that isn't real right now because we are small, we are at the beginning and we are reinvesting things into tourism more than anything. But there is a lot of overlap, People would come, do an activity, but then, do a tour, but then also volunteer. They would even do a tour and lecture. People like that combination. But the main reason why we needed to establish an NGO, even though that concept is so alien to me because I'm more like, as I mentioned, more of an entrepreneur than, a government bureaucrat. We needed to do that so that we can get funding for some of our things also through embassies and government organizations that cannot give money to a tour company. If there was a possibility of being a social enterprise, that would solve our problem immediately. But because it doesn't exist, we pretty much need to have a business side and an NGO side. Because at the end of the day, if we are to build what we are trying to build, we should be attractive to a number of international players, also caring about peace and prosperity in this part of the world.
Are you doing anything to get in touch with them and partner, or is that more or less a plan for the next stage, maybe after you have sorted the income and the finance flowing?
Like, we are all the time building networks. Let me give you one example. Before the pandemic, we managed to organize 5 regional cooking competitions. And every time we would also reach out to the government body and say, could you possibly give us some funding? And when they didn't, we still organize it. Like, we don't want to depend on the public sector. We want to be partners with the public sector. But just this last weekend that I keep referring to because it's so fresh, I developed a definition of what we want to be. You know that term, lean and mean? It's quite common in business, in a mean organization. So we said, we want to be developmental, lean and mean. In whatever we do, whether it's NGO or business, we want to have the same mentality, which is, let's try to make a living. Let's try to make a living with limited resources. Let's not wait for the money to come. Let's try to earn it. So, at the same time, of course, you heard that we don't even know how we are doing. So obviously, this business side is not of my interest when it's about actually making money. It's about the state of mind. The private sector is much more nimble. It's much more quick. It's much more active, especially in Africa. So we want to have that kind of mentality, but at the same time be compatible with the public sector as much as we can be. But that comes, and here you learn that you should not rely on the public sector at all. Get something for them, fine, but I actually skipped one part that might help you understand the scope of what we are doing a little bit more. Before the pandemic, Gorilla Highlands was pretty much a private sector cooperative in 3 countries, bringing together everybody who worked in the tourism sector, in conservation, in anything that was the media, anything that was compatible with our mission. But of course, a loose cooperative that was not anything formally said, but with people who cared about the region, who came together at that annual event, the cooking competition that was pretty much just a good reason to come together and socialize and sample good food. So that was always the idea, private sector orientation.
And you decided to drop this part after the pandemic, or are you reshaping it?
That is the mentality, that is our approach, but we also swallow the bitter pill and set up an NGO because it's good to have it. It's good to have access to other kinds of funding. It's good to have that kind of existence. We want to keep this startup mentality. We want to keep this business-oriented approach to everything that we are doing, not in terms of money, but in terms of the way we do things.
Move fast, not be like a slow public sector type of organization. Definitely, I can understand that.
We action-oriented, not politics-oriented, not wasting time in committees and all those other things. Every entity has a problem of one day becoming too big and then looking back at the startup period and saying, but it's possible to even when you grow, even when more money is injected into what you're doing, with the right culture, you can probably keep what matters. Here, there's so much, there's this mentality of reliance. Somebody needs to sponsor me. It's the duty of the West to give us something that I never liked. Let's do something together. Let's make our own money. If somebody else wants to help us, great. But developmentally, that's much, much better than waiting for handouts from the public sector, being the country or being an international entity. It's the same thing. It's just a different world, because sooner or later you end up doing what those people tell you to do. Sooner or later you prepare reports to make them ahead and to be trendy that year, because this year we are discussing gender, so everything needs to be about gender. That's what want to escape. And mind you, I studied that. Like my master's degree was development studies, so I know that world through and through. And I would like to avoid there being part of it more than we need to be.
Now understood. I have a couple questions maybe to sum up, also maybe to wrap up a little bit. But can you give me a very quick perspective? What are the local salaries of people? Like, how much do people earn? Just for perspective, so I can understand that.
I would say the middle class, let's say middle level employee somewhere in Uganda or Rwanda, probably between $400 and $600 per month. A little bit more in Rwanda, that is more expensive than Uganda, but somewhere there, like to have a relatively good life in terms of renting a good house and everything, then you pretty much need to earn at least $1,000 or $1,500. But I think that most people who are professionals are far below that.
And in terms of farmers, are the farmers just farming for themselves, or are they also selling the produce? What is their average income?
They pretty much do subsistence farming, and then whatever they can sell, that's a bonus. That's, yeah, like their income varies based on the season. But these are mostly women, and they are farming to feed their families. And then if there is some extra, they take it to the market, and so they can buy notebooks for school and such.
But are people happy with what they earn? Like, do they want to buy more, own more? Because in our Western way of life, the whole capitalism is really geared towards owning more, consuming more, having more, but we're kind of slaves for it, right? And I'm always thinking about the societies that are not yet maybe so capitalistic, at least from my perception. We're trying to impose our way of life by bringing progress the way we understand the progress, versus maybe people are super happy with having less, but not having to slave for it and be depressed about waking up at 6 a.m. in the morning and going to a corporate job for somebody else to get extra rich from your labor.
Yeah, I'm afraid these questions are very theoretical at this point of human development, because the first time colonizers came to this continent, everything was pretty much lost. It's the Western mentality, it's the materialistic kind of life that prevails again and again. We can't undo that. We can't pretend that here people, would like to live in a different... No, they also want to have money. But of course, then local preferences and ethics and everything else kicks in. For example, one of my friends complained that it's almost impossible to get somebody to help you fund your startup. They are going to immediately bring millions for your wedding. So it depends on what the money is for. So here, social, human-based things, your family, your community, and so on, they play a much bigger role than in the more individualistic society of the West. But there's also, again, a problem with that, because then suddenly, if you have a decent paid government job, then it's not 3 people who need something from you, it's 30 people who want something from you. And that can easily push you into corruption and other nonsense, just because you need to help the entire family. So these things are really complex, but I can just guarantee you that this is a very materialistic society. Money all the time. If us Europeans, if we maybe have some reservations in terms of what's appropriate to express with money, here there is none. In Europe, you would not so easily give somebody a financial gift for their birthday. It just kind of feels dirty. Here, total preference, just give me money, great. And they are probably right, because giving money gives more flexibility than a fancy gift that a receiver might not even use. So the second part is, of course, very obvious too. If you don't fail, if you've never been rich, then everything that's on your mind is get rich until you reach a certain point when wealth doesn't matter anymore. So most of people here, they want to be rich, And maybe once they get rich, they're going to realize that there's not much happiness in being rich.
Yeah, potentially. What are your biggest challenges?
Human resource, for sure. It's hard to get skilled people locally. We are blessed with international connections, but still, like it's easy to get a good tour guide, but it's not easy to get a good office worker who's going to stay with you for a while. That's quite a challenge.
Why that?
Because people that you train are, first of all, very likely to leave you very soon and look for another job. There's somebody who can probably pay them more and benefit from the knowledge that you've given. But most importantly, young people, they all dream of going abroad. So, for example, out of the 3 people that I've been training, I'm going to lose 2 because they are both going to Europe to study. So that kind of thing is very limiting.
So, did that kind of suggest that there is money in the market for people, for children, to be able to go to study abroad?
Oh, they go after they get sponsorships or something like that. It's not that a family here would easily sponsor somebody's way there. They need to find some friend from abroad that pays for that. That's pretty much it.
And so, who are usually the sponsors then? Friends from abroad? That's like, how do you get friends from abroad than you're, let's say, in Uganda or Rwanda?
Work in tourism easily.
So you're actually helping young people to get education abroad.
Very true, very possible. And that is to our detriment.
Or it's part of the impact, right? Because potentially they will learn the Western ways and come back with new ideas. Or
it's good for them and it's good in the long run, but in terms of what the company needs right now, that's quite a challenge. You're training somebody to lose them.
Maybe you need to add this to your social impact measure. How many young people went to study abroad only because you enabled that?
You know what the problem is? Nobody wants to come back.
For now.
If they want to study, to come back and bring that knowledge, it would be a very different picture. But that is rare. So you have this brain drain all the time. And as I said, if you want a job, go to Europe. Studying, we're going to have a good job and make some money, and then maybe send some cash to Africa and build a house and maybe come back one day. So these are human things. These are not matters of Africa or Europe or whatever. And you can't even stop. Like, how would you say somebody don't go study abroad when, of course, that is what they need and it's good for them?
No, you just have to make them promote as Highland, and they do.
Yeah, we'll see how much work they can still do from there in today's interconnected world. But the reality is that once you study, you get busy, God, and so on. So getting people who can work in the office, who have the right combination of skills and creativity to actually do that part, is a challenge. I just mentioned that example of a graphic designer. If you're good, your market is unlimited and you're always on demand. So you can't access that guy because he works for the European Union or the UN or a big international bank. And then if you train somebody from scratch, it's a much longer process. And then at the end, you also don't know what happens after the person's trained. So that's just like an example from a specific field, but it applies everywhere because the number one priority of young people, specifically in Rwanda, is to leave. Very unfortunate for the country, but that's the reality. So once you have the skills, the connections, and so on, you don't want to be here. I hope we can change that in the very long run, but these are, again, natural human preferences that one needs to respect. The second thing is the general political security environment. There's always something that's going to happen, or in Congo, or in Rwanda, or in Uganda, to mess up with economic and social development. It's just the way it is. Things are getting better. The region is much better off than it used to be, but hey, things can happen. So that can always hit you when you expect it least. So it's just the way it is. Other things, I can't think.
And in terms of security, as in like tourism security, is it in general safe or ish?
It's very safe. It's just a matter of, having local knowledge so that you know where to go and where not to go.
there's always a possibility of certain areas being off limits. You just need to avoid them. The rest is all very safe, and I would not in any way worry about anybody traveling here. But now let me give you an example from our neighbor, from Congo, because it's the most extreme. You have Lake Kivu. In the north of Lake Kivu, you have a city called Goma and a beautiful national park called Virunga. Not just gorillas, they also totally amazing active volcanoes, so you can sleep. You can sleep in the mountain, at the top of the mountain, while looking at the lava lake.
Wow.
Amazing. But for a year, or is it maybe 2 years by now, you can't go there because they have rebels who pretty much occupy park and the area around. So they closed the national park. There is no tourism happening there. And Congo is, I think, rightly accusing Rwanda that they are supporting those rebels. So that's in the north of Lake Kivu. You don't go there. In the south of Lake Kivu, there is a gorgeous city, Bukavu, a national park called Ega with gorillas, a subspecies of mountain of gorillas. There, you can go, and we go all the time.
Mm.
You just need to know which part of Congo is safe at a particular time. In Uganda, in October, we had a very strange incident when a couple of Ugandan rebels were pushed out of Congo by Ugandan militaries. The Ugandan army went to Congo to supposedly finish off those rebels, and they pushed them into a national park and they killed a couple of tourists. They just attacked one Wiko with a newly married couple from Britain and South Africa. Of course, that's going to influence tourism in the whole country, and specifically in that national park, for years to come.
Absolutely.
Just because the military stupidly pushed some rebels into a park.
Yeah.
When people ask me, should I go there? I say yes, because this is now the safest place in the world, because the military is ashamed of what happened. There is huge security. Usually after a terror attack or anything like that, the security is the highest.
Absolutely.
So you just need to be realistic about it, be open to visitors, not drag them somewhere where they are compromised, but also not spread fear where there is no reason to fear.
Yeah.
That's our life here. You need to be smart about it. And if 90% of the territory is safe, why would, try your luck? 10%. Yeah. Slovenians are trying to understand that. I give them the example of the Croatian coast. Have you ever been there to Slovenia, Yugoslavia, that part?
Not Slovenia yet, but around, yes. Croatia, Montenegro and stuff like that, yes.
So in 91, we had a short war that gained Slovenia independence while Croatia fell into trouble for years to come. So Slovenians would routinely go to the Croatian coast, to seaside there, even though some other parts of the country were in war. When it turns Slovenia, said, I get it now. I get it for sure.
Yeah.
That's unfortunately how these things work until we bring peace and prosperity to the entire region. We're going to tell you in about 150 years.
I heard people can now live to 1,000, so in some parallel reality on this planet Earth.
Yeah. Or maybe there's going to be some AI with your characteristic that we can then invite to come for a tour.
Exactly.
I
have 2 more questions. One question, I can tell you both, and then you can pick which one is the easier and which one will come out as we speak. One is, if you had to summarize your achievements, what you've achieved in these 21 years almost now. And then the second question is, if you had a magic wand and you would be able to change anything that is related to what you do, what would that be?
I mean, this last question is related to what you previously asked about what the biggest challenges were. If those challenges were removed, this would be amazingly easy. So let's focus on the former, not the latter, but the former question. I would say that I'm personally proud that we have opened the eyes to thousands of people in terms of how beautiful this world of ours is and how it doesn't make sense to destroy it, and how we can learn from each other in terms of different cultures and experiences and everything. That's probably what I would make, an emphasis. These human connections, human experiences, learning, intercultural exchange, like lives have been enriched in different ways in Africa and abroad because of our activities. If now we are talking about thousands, that's not nothing, but it's small compared to what we still want to do. But that is the story yet to be written.
To be continued.
And with that, I want to invite you to book a tour through Gorilla Highlands. Miha's story, as well as many activities, are ample and open an amazing window to the East African nature, culture, and even the doors to local people's homes for a truly authentic experience. On that note, next week I will be bringing you another story from the Edge of Impact. This time we'll hop to India to meet Plant Trees Online, or Sankalp Taru, a WSA winner from 2016, planting trees and helping local farmers to fight the effects of climate change. Until then, enjoy the Easter holiday if that's something you celebrate.